Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a literal masterclass in atmospheric dread. It's a chilling Bengali horror story called Kuyashe Keerande Biryani, which translates to a plate of ghostly biryani. And look, this isn't just your standard jump scare ghost story. It's this fascinating look at how nostalgia, sensory memory, and deep tragic betrayal can weave a trap so perfectly enticing, you'd basically walk right into it with a smile on your face. We're going to break down the brilliant structure of this narrative step by step and see exactly how it builds that terrifying suspense. So, let's jump right in. Okay, so would you accept a dinner invitation from a ghost? I mean, it seems like a total no-brainer, right? Of course not. But what if you had absolutely no idea they were a ghost? What if that invitation came wrapped up in the warmest, safest, most comforting memories of your entire childhood? Well, that is the exact terrifying dilemma facing our protagonist, Abjera. The pure genius of this story is how it puts us directly in his shoes, making us realize that, honestly, under the right circumstances, any of us might just accept that invitation. Section 1. An invitation from the past. The legendary lure. This story kicks off not in some creepy graveyard or a haunted mansion, but in the super comforting, mundane reality of an everyday neighborhood. The inciting incident is just so innocent. Abra gets a letter, delivered by an old, familiar postman named Haripada. The message is simple, warm, deeply personal. It reads, "I will make your favorite biryani with my own hands. Waiting for you, your Ranu Pishi." Now, Ranu Pishi was his childhood landlady back in the town of Palashpur. This seemingly harmless little piece of paper acts as a psychological anchor. It completely masks the horrors waiting for him because, well, it uses pure affection as bait. And it's not just the affection, you guys, it's the sensory memory. The second Opera reads those words, his mind is just flooded with the intoxicating aroma of fragrant rice, rich ghee, and warm garam masala. This is the irresistible lure. The memory of that legendary mutton biryani is so intensely powerful that it creates a massive blind spot. I mean, Opera totally fails to process a glaring logical flaw here. Decades have passed. Realistically, his old landlady shouldn't even be physically capable of cooking a massive feast for him, if she's even still alive. But let's be real, we've all ignored a few red flags for the promise of a free home-cooked meal, right? His nostalgia just completely overrides his logic. Section 2. Return to Palashpur, a journey back in time. So, Abra actually decides to take the trip, and this physical journey serves as a brilliant metaphor for his shift from the safety of the present right into a forgotten, decaying past. He starts out in the bright morning, boarding a train surrounded by the bustling noise of modern life, hawkers, people laughing. But by the afternoon, the landscape is shifting. He's moving further and further away from the city. And finally, at dusk, that classic eerie threshold between day and night, life and death, he arrives in Palashpur. He steps off into a town that still carries the heavy scent of the past, arriving at a house that time seems to have just completely forgotten. Just picture the physical reality of this house. It stands in such stark contrast to his warm, fuzzy memories. The paint on the walls is faded and peeling off. Plants have literally taken over the cornice. The iron railings are heavily rusted. The story uses this physical decay to signal to S, and it absolutely should be signaling to Abra, that something is deeply, deeply wrong here. The physical rot of this house is the very first major clue that he isn't stepping into a heartwarming reunion. He is stepping straight into a grave. Section 3. The ghostly groom's warning, a stranger in the mist. Right outside this decaying house, the tension really starts to crank up, highlighting some terrifying dramatic irony. The narrative introduces its first overt supernatural element, and it immediately blurs the line between reality and a waking nightmare. See, Abra's expectation is entirely positive. He's thinking, warm welcome, delicious childhood food. But the grim reality staring him right in the face? It's a decaying ruin, and a deeply unsettling encounter. He meets this gaunt, skeletal man, bizarrely dressed in traditional groom's attire, just wandering in the evening mist. Talk about the ultimate red flag. Yet Abra's total obsession with reliving his past pushes him to ignore it completely. This strange groom, who we actually later find out is named Sajal, issues a really dire warning. He says, "You are making a mistake, a very big mistake." When you read the source material, this line is delivered with such urgent, desperate suspense. It's this chilling moment where the supernatural explicitly tells the protagonist, turn back. But the pull of that biryani, the magnetic pull of the past, it's just too strong. Abra brushes right past him and crosses the threshold. Section 4. A Feast of Ashes, the sensory trap. Now this is absolutely crucial. The moment he crosses that threshold and steps inside, the house is pitch dark and filled with old, rotting furniture. Yet, incredibly, the air in that room is thick with the exact intoxicating aroma of the mutton biryani from his childhood. We're talking fragrant rice, garam masala, the whole shebang. The narrative uses these rich, mouth-watering sensory details to ground the supernatural elements. By making the smell of this phantom food feel so incredibly real to Abra, it makes the trap dangerously inescapable. It's literally playing on our most primal responses to scent and hunger.
To really understand why Abra doesn't immediately turn around and run for the hills, we have to look at this concept called moa hibishto. It essentially means a state of being deeply hypnotized or entranced, where your judgment is just completely clouded. Abra is moa hibishto. Even when he looks into an old, rusted mirror and sees a horrific, monstrous reflection instead of his own, and even when this uncharacteristically pale, hunched-over Ranu Pishi appears out of nowhere and claims she forgot she even sent the letter, he stays. The sensory spell of that biryani keeps him glued to the bed, just waiting to be fed.
But then, the ghostly groom bursts into the room, and the horrifying truth completely shatters the illusion. That welcoming bed Avra has been relaxing on? Actually, scratch that. It's suddenly covered in dead, rotting funeral flowers. Ranu Pishi brings out this massive brass plate of steaming hot biryani, but just as Avra reaches out, the groom intervenes. The steaming food instantly transforms. The beautiful, nostalgic memory morphs into a visceral nightmare of black ash, dirt, and food literally crawling with insects. The nostalgia was a complete lie. Section 5. Betrayal and Vengeance. The Tragedy in the Mirror. With the illusion violently broken, the dark backstory is finally revealed to us. This timeline shows us exactly why these spirits are trapped in this ruined house in Palishpur. Years ago, Ranu Pishi arranged a marriage for her daughter, Pujarini, to this man, Sajal. But on their actual wedding night, Sajal revealed his true ugly greed, brutally insulting his new bride. This led to a devastating tragedy the very following day: heartbreak, suicide, and death. And now, in the present day, they're all locked in this eternal haunting, forced to recreate their misery, and constantly looking for new victims to drag down into their purgatory. Let's quickly compare the two entities as they manifest when that rusted mirror cracks open. First, we have Sahal, the skeletal, pale, fearful groom. Interestingly enough, his true motive is actually to keep victims away. He warns Abra, though probably not out of pure goodness, but more likely because he is trapped in this miserable cycle with a vengeful spirit and doesn't want the curse to deepen. On the flip side, stepping out of the cracked mirror is Pujarini, the bride. With vengeful eyes and hair blowing in a phantom wind, she has been totally warped by Sahal's superficial greed into a terrifying, wrathful force, endlessly seeking revenge and an eternal companion. The ghost of Pujarani hisses this line at Sajal. "Did you forget what happened that night? Marrying such an ugly girl just for the property?" Man, it is a gut-wrenching revelation. It completely humanizes the horror for us. We suddenly understand the profound depth of Pujarani's humiliation and Ranu Pishi's eternal agonizing grief over losing her daughter. They aren't just faceless monsters, they are deeply wounded souls driven absolutely mad by betrayal. Section 6. The Desperate Escape. A Chilling Demand. So the backstory is out. The entities are actively clashing, and Abra is caught right smack in the middle of it all as Ranu Pishi makes her ultimate terrifying move. Staring at Abra with these dead, hollow eyes, Ranu Pishi says, "Marry my daughter, Abra. She will feed you biryani with her own hands every day." Wow. This is the horrifying twist laid bare. That entire nostalgic invitation, the beautifully written letter, the irresistible promise of childhood food, it was all an elaborate, supernatural trap to find a new, loving groom for her dead, decaying daughter, to trap Abra there with them forever. The sheer, undeniable terror of this demand finally shatters whatever is left of Avra's trance. He snaps out of it completely. Absolute panic sets in. He suddenly remembers the layout of his childhood home, specifically the back door. In this massive burst of adrenaline, he scrambles away from the rotting bed, away from the spirits, bursting through that back door and fleeing blindly into the dark, misty night. The story ends with him running for his life, the sickening, mixed scent of death and sweet biryani still clinging to the cold air right behind him. We've unpacked the trap, the lore, and the truly terrifying escape. Kuyasheke Rande Biryani masterfully uses the very things we find most comforting right against us. It leaves us with one final chilling thought to ponder. When nostalgia paints a beautiful picture of days gone by, blinding us to reason, if the past calls, sending you a warm invitation wrapped in your absolute favorite memories, will you answer? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and stay curious.